Hello there. My name is Jasom Jensai, and I think it may have just started over. Okay, anyways. Hello there. My name is Jasom Jensai. Welcome to this episode where I'm reviewing Bad Batch Episode 10. But before we get to all of that, I say all of that, it's one thing. But before we get to that, let's get to the question of the stream. And I just realized I did not do a question of the stream, so I'm going to have to come up with one really quick. Okay. I got, what is the name of, I'm going to go away from that because I have the wrong thing up there. Okay, question of the stream is, what is the name of the, basically the general who is pushing for recruited soldiers rather than the clone troopers? You see him in this episode. He's featured pretty much everywhere in the Bad Batch. I'm going to try and not say his name in this review because it's the first question that popped into my head. But yeah, so basically, if you haven't seen one of my streams before, the question of the stream, you get 10 points for getting it correct. You only get one guess, and when the first person to get it right gets the points, and you can't look it up. Those are the 3 rules. So answer that if you know the answer. Otherwise, I guess don't answer. That's what most of you do. Right. So oh, and by the way, you can answer in the comments also, in case you're watching not live. But with that out of the way, dang it, I'm so unprepared. This says Bad Batch Episode 10. It should say 11. I'm going to try something real quick. Bear with me for a second. If you're watching after the stream, you should just skip ahead, I don't know, 20 seconds, something like that. Let's see if I can... Okay, that'll have to do. Great. I uploaded the thumbnail basically instead of the other image I had. Okay, so with all that out of the way, let's finally get to the actual review. Here we go. So I'm going to break this down by character because I was outlining a bit of what I wanted to say and it just didn't really make sense to do it plot-wise, so I'm going to do it character-wise. So let's start with Hera. She's kind of the, I guess, the big deal in this episode. Up till this point, the Bad Batch has been about the Bad Batch. It's been just those 5 characters, Crosshair, gets taken out of the picture, and Omega kind of replaces him. But it's about the Bad Batch, basically, that team. But this episode, they're featured like one scene. It's like minute, maybe 2 minutes, probably a bit in between there. I didn't count, but basically, they're not in this episode very much. And I feel like that's, a lot of people are like asking the question in like the reviews and stuff, oh, is that fine? And then all of them answer yes. So I think it's pretty clear that that's the consensus is yes, it's totally fine to do that. This is a continuation of the Clone Wars, or at least somewhat a continuation of the Clone Wars. Like stylistically and story-wise, it's a continuation of the Clone Wars. And that TV show obviously had a lot of episodes that weren't focused on like Ahsoka and Anakin, and the rest of those, I guess you could call them main characters. There's a lot of different things they focused on in that TV show. So obviously, I think it's fine. But moving on to like everything about like that they did with Hera in this episode, I thought it was actually really, really good. If you have been watching all my reviews and remember all my reviews, because that's the thing too, you'll probably remember that in episode 1, when they showed Kanan, I did not like that at all. It seemed forced to me. It did, like, the voice was way too deep. It was like like they were trying to make Kanan look young and sound young, but they didn't change anything. They wanted to make it recognizable. I don't know. I don't really know what went wrong there. There's a lot of small little things that just I don't like about that. That and it changed canon. But contrast that with Hera. Hera's like introduction and everything was really good in my opinion. The characterization was great. She's adventurous. She goes off and looks at birds. That was cool. Just to tie into her flying, she talks a lot about flying because obviously she becomes one of the best pilots in Rebellion. So it just makes sense that she's kind of obsessed with flying. Then there's the fact that she's even going against her father's wishes and like doing stuff for the rebellion that's forming on Ryloth. And that also makes sense considering she does eventually join the rebellion. But yeah, other than that, I don't know, I just feel like they got the characterization of her very good. Also, I liked seeing Chopper. That was cool too. Nothing super special about Chopper. Like, I mean, obviously he's a special character to people, but he's not like a special character like Luke is. He's just kind of a good companion character, and obviously he's a good companion character in this one. So that's about it for the introduction. Then you have the scene where they go and meet with the Bad Batch. Oh, and by the way, the whole dynamic with her parents, her uncle, and the Imperials and all of that is also done pretty well as well. I do want to say that. But then she meets with the Bad Batch, and while the adults are discussing weapons and killing people and stuff, Hera walks over to talk to Omega, and I thought that was also done extremely well. They had really good chemistry. They like talked about flying. Omega showed Hera her room. They talked about sleeping in the ship, and Hera's like, "That's what I've always wanted to do," which is great because that's what eventually she does, is she lives in the Ghost. So yeah, I don't know. It just seemed like a really good scene to me. I'd have to like study it a lot more to know exactly why, but I feel like they worked really well together, and I'd be interested in seeing more of their connection in future stories, whether the Bad Batch or maybe something else. I don't know. But moving on from that, you have when she gets caught, and also I did like that kind of like, you like it in the same way you like a really good or a really well done bad guy. It's good to have like when the character like disobeys their parents or does something kind of dangerous, that they don't just get away with it every time. So yeah, there's that, they get caught, and then that whole scene with you know what, actually that's more with Cham, Syndulla, and them, so I'm going to talk about that in the next section, which is all about Cham, Syndulla. I also thought they did him pretty well. So the story starts, or I should say the episode starts with like Orn Free-Taa giving the Ryloth people a speech about actually does a little bit of dialogue to kind of show this situation. But anyways, Orn Free-Taa is giving a speech, and the people don't like it, because obviously they don't like him. He's greedy, and, you know, if you've seen the Clone Wars, you know why the people don't like him. He doesn't care about them. He just cares about his own welfare. But then Cham Syndulla, this guy who has sacrificed so much for Ryloth, gives a speech. He says basically the same thing, although in a different way. But he says basically the same message, and the people just hear it. It's awesome. And it just shows how, I guess, accepted Cham is, in that he is actually someone who fights for the people. It's not like sure, we see him do it in the Clone Wars, but it's nice to see that the people respect it too. But the thing about this, though, is that he's advocating for peace, which obviously is the goal of his whole, like the reason he fought the Separatists is so he could have freedom and peace. So he is like so tired of fighting that he doesn't want to admit that the Empire is actually bad, and he wants his children to grow up or his child, I think Hera's the only one, he wants his child to grow up in a time of peace. So he tries to like placate the mob and, you know, calm them down a bit. But obviously by the end of the episode, he's realized the Empire is actually not the best thing for Ryloth, and is kind of corrupt and trying to take advantage of them. So yeah, I feel like they did him really well. I think it's totally believable that he would decide that not to fight after everything that happens in what do you call it? I'm blanking. Everything that happens in the Clone Wars. But yeah, so I feel like they did him pretty well. Also, his dynamic with Orn Free-Taa was also pretty well done. Just the way Orn Free-Taa is super jealous, but is also scared. And Cham is just kind of indifferent and honorable basically about it. He's not I don't know. He's not rubbing it in Orn Free-Taa's face or whatever. And that's probably, if he did, Orn Free-Taa would probably be less scared of him, because it's kind of childish to do that thing. So I feel like that whole dynamic was done pretty well. Another thing that was done pretty well is, I forget his name, but it's it's Hera's uncle, the blue-skinned guy who's advocating for fighting the Empire. That guy. I feel like the dynamic between him and Hera and Cham and everyone was done pretty well. That and Cham's wife, or Hera's mom. both of them were more like, we gotta fight the Empire. They're less idealistic, more, I guess, willing to fight, willing to, I don't know. Of course, there was that one scene where Cham was about to kill Orn Frita, and Hera's mom is like, don't kill him. So I guess it goes a little bit in different ways. Like they flip off and on. But the blue-skinned guy, he's definitely more willing to fight. Which I think it's good that there was like a point of view to like oppose Cham's and to kind of get him to change. Because without those guys, I don't think he would have. But yeah, that's my thoughts on basically all the Twi'leks in the episode. Great to see Ryloth again. I love this period of time is so interesting for Ryloth because you have so much like the whole Clone Wars arc. Cham was like not fighting, but like resisting Republic aid because he didn't want them to stay and occupy the planet afterward. And then they wouldn't have, but then the Republic turns into the Empire, and suddenly it's headed by Darth Sidious, who doesn't really care about Cham, and so then Cham has to fight again, and it's just an interesting time for the Twi'leks. But yeah, moving on to more of the Bad Batch stuff, we see Crosshair a lot in this episode. One thing to note is that his like face, or not face, his like head is shaved, and he's got like some sort of scarring on the back of his head, like the back right. But other than that, he's completely healed from getting hit by those, like, what do you call it? Venator class Star Cruiser, those engines there. I mean, he's completely healed from that, which, makes sense. It's Star Wars. They have incredible healing technology. But one thing to speculate about is, and I've heard a lot of people speculating about this, is that his chip was damaged. Personally, I don't think it is. Story-wise, it could be interesting. And like people said, he could be acting, but he just seems to not be acting in that way. But really, we don't really see that much of his character. We see him like shooting stuff and things. Oh, and by the way, that one shot where he takes down the cruiser, that was cool to see. I don't remember exactly what they did, but it looked really cool. Obviously a good shot, so there's that. And while we're talking about him, I'm going to move him into frame a bit. Boom. There we go. There's Crosshair. So, yeah, I don't know. We didn't see that much of him, but he was there, so I thought I'd point him out and talk about him. Then there's Hauser, which is the guy with, he's the clone trooper with like the blue stripes. Basically the commander of the forces on Ryloth. And I actually liked his character a lot. It's not like we've seen a lot of him. He's not like a Captain Rex that we've seen like dozens of episodes of him in. But he was pretty cool. I liked his haircut. I liked his his markings. Those are cool. And his personality, of course, was also interesting. One very unique thing about him is that he does have a personality and he does have markings. Whereas every other clone, except for, of course, Bad Batch and Rex, who have their chips removed, they all have, like, white armor, they've got, like, no emotions. So he's, like, the only one. And a lot of people are speculating that he's, like, his chip didn't work or he got his chip removed or something. Personally, I don't know how to feel about that. Rex does say that some of the chips just didn't work. Or whatever. I don't remember the exact words, but basically it was like a very rare occurrence that the chips didn't work. So maybe he's one of those rare occurrences. Maybe they're fading, like a lot of people are saying. Maybe he's just affected differently. I don't know. I'm looking forward to seeing more of this story. I don't know if they're going to focus on Ryloth again in the next episode, but it kind of seems like they've got a lot of stuff that they could finish and show a lot more about when it comes to the Ryloth movement and all of that happening. So yeah, that's that. So that's about all the characters, unless you've got one more you want me to talk about, and you can leave that in the chat. But now I'm going to move on to talking a bit about the plot, because there's some stuff about the plot that didn't get covered when I talk about the characters. So the pacing is one. The first, like, truly action scene, like with explosions and stuff, was like at the very end of the episode when Hunter shoots down the thing. Like there was a few where Hera was like looking through binoculars and then some clones show up. Like there were some scenes with conflict, but there wasn't really any action scenes. And I'm not saying that every like episode needs an action scene or every story needs an action scene, but when you're watching a show like The Bad Batch, which has action scenes like in every episode, like even the one where they go to the Venator class Star Cruiser and get their chips removed with Rex, it doesn't have very much action, but they insert a little action scene where like Wrecker is crossing the bridge and the rope breaks and he gets sucked in by the sea monster thing. Like that action scene there is for pacing. I didn't really like it because I knew it was for pacing and it just took me out of the episode. But I feel like this episode you could have found a way to put an action scene in, and it would have helped a bit with the pacing. That or you could just tone down the action in the rest of the episodes, and it would feel more seamless, less like suddenly this is a completely different style of episode. Or you could just add more tension another way. There's lots of things you could do. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like the pacing was a bit slow because of that. Not a super big problem. I still like the episode, but it does make it a bit difficult, or not does make it a bit. It just makes it a little bit worse. Still not bad though. Anyways, last thing I want to cover before I like sum up all my thoughts is how this will fit into the rest of the TV show. Like I've already mentioned that I think there will be another episode featuring Ryloth heavily, and maybe the Bad Batch get more involved in that, maybe not. I could go either way, but other than that, I think this has more implications for stuff outside the Bad Batch than it does for inside of it, such as like Omega meeting Hera. I think that could show up later. That could show up in Bad Batch too, but it could show up later. We also see a bit more of Ryloth, which I love seeing that. I think it'd actually be pretty cool if we saw like a whole TV show, maybe just one season TV show, but still like a TV show about the Free Ryloth movement during the Empire. That'd be cool. Yeah, that's about it for this review. So to sum up my thoughts, I thought it was pretty good. I'd say like a 7.5 out of 10. So definitely not a bad episode, but nothing like groundbreaking great or whatever. We didn't get to see a lot of Bad Batch, but I think that's totally fine. We did saw a bunch of Crosshair, but I mean we didn't see much of his emotions. He was more just doing stuff for the Empire. You've got that one clone, Captain Hauser, who seems to have a personality even after Order 66. That's a bit odd, and maybe they'll explore that. Maybe it's just how they wrote him. I don't know. I can't decide what I think on that. Then you've got how they did Hera. That was really good, and the whole dynamic with the whole Syndulla family was also really good, and Orange Rita, I liked it all. Yeah, that's pretty much all of my thoughts on that episode. So with that, hang on, one more thing. What was I gonna say? Right, that scene with Omega and Hera meeting, that was also really cool. I liked that. Lots of foreshadowing for Hera being a good pilot. Good too there. Which I thought of because of the Omega and Hera scene. But with all that done, I think I'm going to end the stream. So, goodbye, old friends.